Hello, everyone. Welcome to Secure IT, where we discuss all things cybersecurity, people, trends, and products. Thank you for joining us on this continuing journey. I'm excited today because I'm exploring a long pending need to know more about the lay of the land, or in this case, the lay of my former motherland. I'm not sure, Ravi, if it's once a motherland, always a motherland, but we're looking at the interesting and intriguing world of cybersecurity in India. Our guest Ravi Subbiah is highly credentialed, tons of hands-on experience, and I could think of no one better because, as you'll learn today, his career transforms both from US and India, so it gives us reference points in both those areas. And as I mentioned earlier, cybersecurity in India, in some cases, again, do not take this personally, listeners, is an oxymoron because of privacy and Indians learning about privacy. At the same time, we'll talk about the privacy hacks and various other things. Now, as with any good professional straight out of India, Ravi has a ton of credentials to his name with lots of acronyms. So here goes, Ravi. Certified Chief Information Security Officer. So you are a certified CISO. You're also a certified Information Privacy Manager. That's a CIPM. You're also a certified Cloud Security Knowledge. That's CCSK. You're a certified Information Security Manager. And of course, bringing up the rear, you've got Project Management or Program Management Professional and PMP. And of course, the much desired or the much required ethical hacker as well. Your journey basically has, as I said, been across various continents, includes Infosys in the US, Cognizant, and currently at TCS as a cybersecurity risk and privacy advisory manager. So with that, welcome, Ravi.
Thank you for having me on this podcast as well. So I'm really excited and also eager to know, right, what you have on top of your mind and what I can bring value to you as well. So I'm
Absolutely. It's going to be a really fun conversation as we typically, we start and end with the person. So we want to know about the man behind the myth. And so, we talked about the various steps in your journey, Infosys and TCS, and I didn't mention that there was a stop at R.R. Donnelly, and you dabbled a little bit in tractor manufacturing as well. So, Ravi, a lot of people on this podcast are looking either to start their journey or embellish or do further in cybersecurity. Walk us through your background and your career and the various choices that you made to get you here.
Sure, Philip. So, first of all, right, thank you. And good morning, everyone, right? So, from my background perspective, so I'm basically an engineer from India, right? So, engineering in India means a lot in those days, about 25 years back. I started my journey with Infosys as a software engineer because way back development was one of the core. So, I started with development in Java and .NET. So worked across multiple clients in US when I was a developer. So in 2008, I got a chance to move to cybersecurity industry, which was evolving at that point of time, because in those days, cybersecurity means okay, you passwords, admin privileges, patching, OS, and other things, right? And that is more from an information and physically you look at it, just you have the access card to entry into any of these DCs as well. So I started working as a application security, right? Focusing on application security, on penetration testing and SAST and DAS. So slowly I got evolved and focused on identity and access management, implementing programs, right, for clients in US, end-to-end implementation starting from your access management to identity management, your governance and directory structure as well. Then I set up SOC centers monitoring 24 by 7, set up a team back in US and India, then focused on GRC, cloud security, data security, and data privacy. Right now, if you look at it, there are tons of laws, privacy laws across the globe, and even in India, if you look at it, 2 days back, the cabinet has cleared the privacy bill. So even in India, we will have a clear focus on privacy, like GDPR and your CCPA and other laws as well. And regarding my journey, so I was focused on the consulting and advisory in the initial. Maybe I'll look at it from the last 10 years, and then as you said, right, so I did spend a time in Dora, Donley, and Taffy to understand the CISO perspective. See, it's not about always you focused on advisory and consulting without understanding what the CISO wants. So I thought, okay, let me spend some time on the CISO role as well. What an organization is, what a real CISO undergoes, what is his pressure, what is his constraints, how he interacts with the board. So that's the perspective. I spent some time as a CISO to understand the nuances, so that again I can come back to consulting and advisory, which I'm doing right now with TCS. So this helps me, right, to focus from a strategy perspective. So it's not always you go and say, okay, I have this service, please take it. I'm more looking, I work with the CISOs, I'd more look at from a strategic point of view, work with them and define the roadmap and strategy instead of focusing, hey, this is the service I have and go and sell it. No, that's not going to work anymore. You have to be in their journey if you want to succeed. See, one thing is which helps me is one is the certification and the other is the experience. So the combination of knowledge, theory knowledge plus practical knowledge put in together has helped me to succeed in the journey what I am in. And I'm a continuous learner. I've been giving certifications every year. I have been uh, doing presentation in conferences, few podcasts and blogs as well. So with this, right, as a background, I'm here and I also mentor people. So it's not always right, I learn, I give myself, I also mentor young people who are there, whomever connects with me and ask for guidance and help. So it's more, I'm happy to guide and mentor because cybersecurity field is vast and it is evolving with the future in mind. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for walking us through that journey. And I'm anxious to roll up our sleeves and start talking about the conversation. And, as you gently brought us through with your background and certain tenets and control points that you have with your US experience, right? You talked about GRC. You actually said GDPR and CCPA, which I'm pretty impressed that we are still keeping this front and center, because CCPA as of now is very California specific. California does lead, I firmly believe, not only because it's my place of residence for the last 30 years, but fortunately or unfortunately, California leads in these terms, whether it was Senate bill way back that started with privacy, and today CCPA, and evolving further. California seems to be setting the tone for privacy and cybersecurity, right? There's no doubt about that. I am itching, Ravi, to go back to India. Okay, and I'll give you a little background that might help our guests as well. In the late 80s is when I took my first computer course in Bombay. It was Bombay at the time, and this was this mainframe where you had to put on, you know, protective gear to go in and put punch cards through,
punch.
and what a great experience, right? The manual for this IBM, I don't even remember, it was 1380 or something, that the book alone costs, like 50 or $60 back in the day, the manual, right? And so fortunately, as I think back, the college that I went to actually offered or required us to do a computer course as part of graduating from my bachelor's in commerce at the time, and then doing a couple of master's degrees in India, which is very typical, and learning more about computers. So the journey continued, right? And I went on to work hard, the pharmaceutical company, and set up their costing department. At that time, we used to work on minis, right? And it was still early 90s, and we were not, I sorry, late 80s, and we were trying to conquer the world. One of the things that India is proud of is that India has probably the maximum number of internet connections just per capita, right? The number of people, you're doing some very advanced things in India as well, where you can go buy vegetables off a local vendor and scan a card and make payments. Things that we dare not dream of here yet, right? It's the retail consumer to consumer is highly evolved, and today you're leading the world in terms of the equivalent
Digital.
of the PAN, right? The
Did
PAN and the Aadhaar card, right? We're still with the whole social security thing, but the way you are categorizing and identifying, you're doing some magnificent things. Fact remains that it's a billion plus people, and resources are scarce. There was a time in India I could, for a dollar, and I don't believe I'm saying this, but maybe I just watched that you could buy the whole Microsoft suite for a dollar on a
Yeah,
CD, right? Back in the day.
back.
But and today you're talking about probably a 400 or 500 page document on privacy that the cabinet has just looked at, right? So amazing times, and we're moving rapidly forward. Tell me, how's a day in your life in India as a CISO? And I don't mean the services that TCS is providing to the US, but I'm talking about the culture within Indian organizations when it comes to privacy. Can you comment on that, please?
Oh, see the privacy, right? In India, if you look at it, it's still, I'll say it's not still matured like how GDPR and CCPA is. Yeah, as you said, CCPA is the second version of the privacy is being rolled out as well. So even when I was in California, right, CCPA made the big difference, right, from the privacy law across the 50 states, because all the 50 doesn't have the privacy except few states, but still CCPA holds good. So coming back to India, right, the privacy is still a long way to go in India. And if you look at it in the last 2 years, the same privacy bill, it's being tabulated in the in the parliament, which got back and forth updated. So right now it is cleared, but still it's, see, the implementation, right, it's a billion people, right? In India it takes a long way. And still, if you go, right, wherever you go, you get the mobile numbers, your Aadhaar card. It's still not matured, that matured, like from how it has to be kept confidential. If you go everywhere, people ask, even you go to a scan or center or the Xerox center, what you call your, you still, people get it and they just throw it. So the privacy, it's not embedded across the people, but organizations, if you look at it, have taken that seriously across India. And every organization,
Indian organizations.
yeah, Indian organization, because the point is, many of the service companies, they work with people in Europe and US, so they
Right.
understand the importance of privacy. So whether they collect the data of the employees or they work or execute the data of the customer, they're taking importance, utmost care, and implement controls.
That is really good to know, Ravi. And so I want to do a little back and forth here, right? In the US, there's PII, right? There's personal
Correct.
information. And we are trained from a young age to hold dear the nine numbers, sorry, the eight numbers that form our social security, the social security, right?
It's a
Sorry,
nine
you're
number.
counting,
Yeah.
it's nine. Yeah,
Six.
it's so far back in my mind that so the nine numbers that form your social security are kept highly confidential. It's up there with your medical records and everything else. Like, don't share your social security number, period. Right? In India, the vision of traveling in a train, right, where you're trying to do something, you've got an hour journey and you're listening to something, and there are three guys who are standing holding on to the
Holding
bar
on.
watching, right? Or you're at the bank trying to do a transaction, and there are two heads right behind you
Right.
are saying, hurry up and let's move because there's a line behind you, right? So it's unfortunately that's the the state of affairs. There's overwhelming need for resources. So privacy and space are concepts that are generally alien. I love my Indian brethren, but it's true, right? We walk shoulder to shoulder, we hold hands in public. There's no concept of personal space. Given that, And I'm really glad that you're saying, hey, look, you know what, organizations are taking privacy seriously. Does the average consumer hold privacy important at all or not in India?
No, no. So
Oh,
that's what it is still. If you look at it, it's just tabulated in that parliament and implementing it, and it is going right to the rurals and to across the consumers is going to take a lot of time, and of course it's limited. So it's being educated yourself. You have to. So for now, you have to ensure that your PI data is secure. So you don't inform or you don't communicate to anyone unnecessarily, including your PAN card, including your Aadhaar number, or including your mobile. See, mobile number. See, in it's like this. In US, if you put it "Do Not Disturb," you don't get a call from anyone else, which I have experienced as for myself for 10 years. In India, I have been registering it for every alternate months, but still I get calls from all marketing scans and everything as well. So you can understand, right? The mobile number itself which goes. See, other number still it's getting misused to a certain level, but that privacy, okay, this is my number, that awareness is there, but the implementation to prevent is not there.
yeah.
So it's more right, as you said, when the fines like GDPR fines in millions, like it won't come in millions in India, maybe a few thousands of rupees. When it comes, it becomes very critical. And as I said, see, the having a DPO in every organization or everywhere, right, it is very critical. So in India right now, the cert has mandated all organizations, including government organizations, to have a CISO as a permanent position. So
Interesting.
yeah, so that's the good move which has happened. So we will have a CISO in every government organization. Of course, we have in all private service, etc. So including a government organization, and they should have a security team as well. So that kind of development which we are doing across in every area as well. But the implementation of Indian law from privacy perspective, it's going to take some time, like GDP.
Good.
But
Thank
but
you.
but we will reach. We will reach there because
I have
I'm an
no
Indian.
doubt.
I'm an Indian, and I'm saying we will have the PII privacy law with fines very soon, implemented very soon.
Yeah, and that is the stick part of this, right? The carrot and the stick, right? So yes, people will do whatever it takes to avoid law, to avoid penalties and fines. And you know, kudos to the attempt. It's mainly starting with the fact that look, we're moving a billion plus people. Culturally, the concept of privacy has to change at the consumer
Correct.
level, and that trend will follow into organizations so that people will now call, you know, your favorite app, your Ziggy or your Zomato, which is the equivalent of our DoorDash, and say, hey, look, you know what, I don't want my address published, or I
Yes.
don't want my neighbor to know what I'm eating, or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
Today it doesn't matter. Today it's a free for all. But I am firmly with you, Ravi, that 5 years or 10 years from now, for sure, you and I will be having a very different conversation about privacy in India. And the good news is that the government is firmly behind this, as well as business world, right? Organizations in India are moving forward. So thank you, because you know the moment we organized this podcast with you a few weeks back, I was itching to know about the lay of the land when it comes to the individuals, right? The average Indian person and
See,
their privacy.
See, we Indians, right? We as a whole, right? We follow, right? See, if you look at it 2, 3 years back when the pandemic happened, COVID, when the Prime Minister of India, right, Narendra Modi said the next 2 months it's complete lockdown. There's nothing. When he said that, people followed, and we adhered, so that the pandemic impact was very, I won't say it is more, very less, but it was to a certain extent, but it was controlled. So like that, some measures if we put in, across, right, from a privacy law perspective as well. This is what it is, this has to be adhered, this is followed, otherwise strict fines. So we are evolving, we are developing, we are now more concerned. Of course, from a population perspective it is too much, but the adherence will come, maybe start with 30-40%, but eventually 90 plus should be there.
Since you mentioned COVID, Ravi, I'm going to share kind of a little humor with you, right? So there are these ancient Indian concepts that the West has gradually been adopting. So, yoga, for example, is on
It's true.
steroids in the United States. Now we've got yoga with goats and yoga with babies and yoga with puppies. And I'm sure that was not what was intended originally with the Vedic times, but so be it,
That's
right? we've
yeah.
adopted we've adopted yoga mats, and we firmly go every morning, and we contort in various studios all across the country. But God bless India for giving this gift to the rest of the world. So COVID times, right? India has the whole world going namaste because no one wants to touch
Yeah,
anyone.
that's
A Vedic concept that has been there for years, for decades, right? I mean,
decades.
so the same thing with privacy, right? The average Indian is very stoic, lives their life with technically nothing to hide. That's the concept of privacy, right? And so it's deep, it's a thought. And maybe one of the things that India is telling the rest of the world when it comes to privacy is, live your life open. I don't know. We will circle back in a few years and we'll see how you're doing. But thank you for that. I want to move the conversation forward now to organizational behavior generally, and your life as a CISO, both here in the US and in India. You made a comment about earlier while we were talking that a CISO's life is highly short-lived, and you had some statistics to quote on this. And what I'd like to wrap around in this question as well, after you've talked about your life as a CISO, is what is top of mind for you? There's privacy, there is zero trust, there's AI that I want to talk about in a following question. But as a CISO in India, there's boards, there's the board requiring you to do certain things, there's governance, there's GRC, and I can go on and on and on. As a CISO, what's top of mind for you?
See, from a, it's like, if you look at it, right, as you said, from a board perspective, if I go to the board and say, oh, I have remediated the risk, we are risk reduced, the first question will say, are we safe, yes or no? So we can't go and give, maybe just give answers, oh, we are 90% safe, 10% there is an exposure, we don't know. It happens. So none of the organizations across the globe can go and say, I'm 100% foolproof, I'm safe, because threats are evolving daily. And hackers are using, as you said, from AI, ML, etc., right? They are using loopholes to find, and there are threats which are evolving. And to put it right, the question which you said from a CISO perspective, so I'll tell that and then go to the next from a ransomware perspective.
Please.
If you look at it, right, the CISOs more, right, they are here, say they're also human, they are here to help the organization to mitigate the risk and control the damage. They don't want a breach. They want a 24 by 7 monitoring across. But what happens is, if by forbidden, if something happens, the CISO is the one which is going to be get blamed. And if you look at it in the last 2020 to 2022, there's a metric which says about there's a 400% right increase in ransom. So it's like every organization, right, whether you are in whichever domain, so some get reported, some don't get reported, because it depends on how big the organization is. So the CISOs, right, get burned. At the end of the day, they are humans. And so there's a big turnaround as well, right? From every organization, from a CISO. So this is something which I'm not telling. This is from a metrics based on the surveys. Every 2-3 years, the CISOs, right, they keep moving from their job, because it's, see, at the end of the day, that's a different thing which I which every year, right? Because first year they are they are getting into the organization, understanding the organization. Second year, they are trying to put something which works, which doesn't work. Third year, something happens, they are to be blamed. So they don't. So they are to be
That's
blamed.
the life of a CISO.
Yeah, that's like life of a CISO. So 3 years, fourth year, they get moved along,
Right.
right? So
Right.
some of the CISOs, if you ask me, they want to leave the position CISO and move out to different jobs or other things. But if
Right.
you look at it, see, that's what it is happening. It's neither the problem, right? See, at the end of the day, it's a business. For any organization, it's a business. So we have to keep our business running. We have to grow. See,
Yep.
the business aim is to keep growing and nothing, and our reputation should not get damaged, and we should not get fined or penalized by regulatory or any other governments as well. So this is something which is happening as well, and that's why the CISO movement is, which is not stable in any organizations as a whole, right? But there are very few, maybe 5 years, they see. See, at the end of the day, they also look from their futuristic growth perspective as a CISOs, right? So what they can bring value. If in an organization they get stuck, right, and there's no budget, if there is no budget getting approved, there is no team and other things, they also, they can't do anything. That's so this kind of things which happens in the organization, that's why this kind of things happens. But one of the key metric which I want to say is, say right now we have ransomware incident which is happening every 11 seconds, right?
Globally.
Yeah,
Okay.
globally, every
Yeah.
11 seconds we have a ransomware threat, which something gets reported, something not getting reported. But
Sure.
if you look at it in the next 7 to 8 years, or by 2030, 31, every 2 seconds you will have a ransomware incident happening across the globe. So the threat landscape is increasing, ransomware, the breaches, and you have technologies, right, which are emerging technologies which are coming up, which is of course, see, always gives you benefits, which pros and cons as well, right? So which I want to talk about as well when you talked about the trends perspective as well. So that's which is happening. And from a threat landscape perspective, if you look at it, right, the last 5 to 8 years, right, it's a never ending race, right? And the rate of change where the cybersecurity and the attack surface are increasing massively, right, than they were at the past. If you look at it in the past 5 years, than the 10 years before, in 20, if you look at it 15 years back, okay, people don't know, oh, what's ransomware, what's breach, because what's a breach, what you're talking about, oh, okay, the password is getting leaked, it's fine, someone has stolen the password, someone, that's what we talk about right now. It's different kinds of ransomware groups are there in the market. It's again different kinds of hacking happen, so I don't want to get into that.
So, Ravi, that's fair, right? I mean, thank you for the large lay of the land. Is ransomware a concern for the generally in India for the CIO, CTO, CISO in India?
Yes, it's a concern because we have seen the increase in ransomware, and some of the big organizations itself has got
Okay.
breached. uh,
Interesting. So
yeah.
this affects organizations globally,
Yes.
including in India. And then, so I'm going to do a little, well, kind of rapid fire. And don't, not to make you nervous, but so that's ransomware. Let's talk about privacy. Again, just really quickly lay off the land. Am I right? 400 or 500 page document that's going to come out pretty soon. That's going to be India's privacy law. Our CTOs, CEOs concerned in India.
No, it's not a concern, sir. Even if you look at GDPR, we talked about multiple pages, but if you look at it, there are principles, there are process that has to be adhered with the fines, what it has to be done, right? So similarly, we have documented 200 pages, but the high level remains the same, right? Any privacy, if you look at it from a PII, PHI perspective, we will have the high level principles which needs to be adhered with the fines. Yeah, of course, it will not be in millions like how GDPR. It will be, so again, I have not seen how much is the fine, but there should be a fine of maybe in lakhs or crores. Yeah, it should be there.
Enough to be a deterrent, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good. So we talked a little bit about privacy. We talked about ransomware. Let's talk about AI, for example. How are Indian organizations looking at AI?
See, because see, we in India, right, across not only the CISOs, but it's more across the other areas as well, from development and maybe the transformation and other perspective, because they are being adhered and used. But I want to talk about on the cybersecurity, which is from a
Please,
CISO's perspective.
please.
Because CISOs are exploring, right, the AI ML, the reason being to improve the threat detection and response capabilities. So, see, they are using it. So, what's the threat I have in my landscape? How I can immediately respond and and remediate the risk. That is one thing, and also they are working on some of the advanced analytical tools, right, which can maybe analyze a vast amount of data to potentially identify threats. So if you look at it from AI/ML CISOs, or looking at it from a threat detection, response, and protection perspective. But being said that, it's again, right, as I say, it's CISOs and then CIOs are using that large volume of data to, it's more comes from a big data and other analytical perspective to see where the trend is growing on as well. So as a whole, AIML, it's a boon as well and a con as well. So if you look at it, boon, yeah, it helps in threat detection and protection, even the hackers are doing are
Yeah,
getting into the AI/ML
no doubt.
to identify the loopholes and to cause a ransomware incident or breach as well. So it's on both sides of the coin from AIML. But of course, we have to keep developing. As we develop, we will have the threats increasing, the threat attack surface increasing. We have more controls which need to be in place. At the end of the day, if you look at it, it's all comes into, yeah, awareness, right, the trainings and awareness program, which I will tell you if we have some time. That is one thing which is very critical for any organization as a whole, right, that helps them not only to detect but also prevent the incidents from happening as
And last of our rapid fire questions, India is a huge market and tough to do business with. Okay, mainly from a legislature point of view, U.S. organizations or North American organizations come in. It's there's a lot of paperwork to be done to register, etc., etc. What does the Indian market look like for North American companies, cybersecurity companies? Is there potential for
it's
cybersecurity companies to enter into the Indian market?
Yes, yes. See, cybersecurity in India is still, maybe I'll say, if I say some percentage, people will still argue. But I'll say we are still not like US or Europe. We are still far behind in cybersecurity being implemented across. But considering the number of companies, the number of people, and other things, that's a huge potential from an Asia Pacific market. India has a huge potential from a cybersecurity perspective, as I say. So even APAC, when we talk about the Singapore, Australia, and even right Japan, it's and China as well, right? So I should not leave at that. So there have been a vast growth in cybersecurity, which has happened. But India, it's evolving, and we have a huge market and a lot of product companies. If you look at it, are being developed in India or being or maybe some American companies, right? If you look at it, they're starting their centers in India to get into and penetrate into the Indian market. It's a huge business, which is, and as I said, so right now that the cybersecurity business across the globe is going to be $500 billion in 2031. So it's like 8 years from now, we are about 240 billion or 245 billion. So it's going to be double in next 6 7 years. So it's a huge market, and we have products, right, coming up for every controls body, and the number of products is huge, and now every organization is looking to consolidate it. And one good thing which has happened is the Microsoft coming up, right? So even a few weeks back they said they're coming up with a suite of products which will protect organizations end to end, right? So I was thinking, so that's my view. So it's not like anyone has said, it's my view. So if Microsoft, right, is having a product which can do anything and protect from end to end perspective, so what will happen to the other products which are already
Absolutely.
existing?
Yeah, and this is not the first time, right?
Yes.
Microsoft gave away Bitdefender for free in the early days, and you're right, they are disruptors. And so, interesting statistics that the spend in cybersecurity globally will double in 5 to 8 years. That is absolutely true. Also, true is the fact that there's a disproportionate growth of cybersecurity spend by small businesses, as well as Indian markets lead in terms of that proportion of small businesses to large businesses, and so India stands to be a great potential market. And thank you for identifying that, Ravi. So time is moving faster, and I'm so excited to talk to you. So I'm going to try to squeeze in a couple more questions here. And one is, this is the dream with me section of the program, right? So tell me, what does the future look like for cybersecurity for you in India?
See, the future, right? If you look at it from an Indian perspective, it's a huge market, and it's see this, as I said, right? The threat, as I said, the threat landscape which is keep evolving, and we have ransomware incidents which are happening across, right, every 11 seconds and 2 seconds in the future, and the IoT devices. And if you look at it, there will be like the number of devices which are connected to the internet will be about 500 billion in 2030. See, I'm saying everything. So it's again, right, 2020 and 2030 and 2010. So it's a 10-year horizon which I'm talking about. So 500 billion devices will be there. And the future of cybersecurity, as I said, as the threat landscape, right, keeps evolving. I want to say some cyber threats which is going to be there in the next 10 years and how we can mitigate it as well. So, the one is these third party or the supply chain attacks. That's, you have a lot of third parties products, the supply chain is going to increase. Your digital surveillance, your IoT enabled advanced attacks, because a lot of devices you have a lot of advanced attacks, because every, because the applications, right, which are being developed by the small SMEs, as you said, it doesn't go through a proper security life cycle. It is just developed and given, so we don't know the vulnerability threats, malware and other things which it possesses as well. And your threat is going to be their advanced hybrid threat, your artificial intelligence AI. So I
I
said,
was going to say not only IoT but AI enabled
yeah,
threats
it's
as well.
AI abuse from hackers and
Right.
others, which is going to be there. And the last which I want to say is the skill shortage. See, we talk about cybersecurity and next 10 years with a lot threats, but still we don't have the skills, right, of people who can help guide. So that's one thing which I see, as I said, right, initially, the mentoring guidance perspective, which if many of the leaders, right, if they take that as an, I won't say as an hobby or as an opportunity to help and guide others, the skill shortage will move off. So see,
Ravi,
and
well said, right? So there's a as of now, it's $3 million of a shortage of, sorry, not dollars, 3 million
3 million.
people needed in cybersecurity. You've got over a billion people. Give us a few people for cybersecurity.
Sure, why not? See, that's what, right? As I said, I want to leverage or guide, help, right? So when we look at it, see, every, I can't make an individual a master of all, right? So if you look at it, I spent like years spending time on identity, access management, SOC service, GRC, cloud security, your privacy, and other perspective. And when I talk about the emerging IT, IoT, 5G, which we have not talked about, 5G and
Sure.
AI, ML, blockchain, cryptocurrency. So these are all getting over, right? So you need specialized people, as you see, right? You need monitoring, you need identity, because that's going to be your core future, right? Your identity. When you talk about identity, it's not about username and password, right? That is going to go. So one is the future which we are talking about is passwordless authentication. There's no password. I can't remember the passwords for
Absolutely
all
right.
the different sites. So
There
that's,
should be no reason to remember the password.
yeah. So your passwordless is one of the thing which I'm going to be the future as well. Your 5G security, your digital identity, your quantum, right? See, quantum computers or quantum computing, which you talk about the encryption data, right? That's data encryption as a whole, right? When you store it, because your
Right.
privacy comes in. So the one
Yeah.
thing which I want, when I say data security and data privacy, so people always mix that. So it's both are different, but they should complement each other. One is you are putting the measures to prevent, one is you are giving the right of the individual, and balancing the both is very critical. See, you can't have privacy without security. So
True.
you can have security without privacy, but you can't have privacy without
It
security.
does it.
So
I agree. The way I say it is having the right data at the right place at the right time with the right person.
that is one thing, and the other thing is zero trust.
Yes.
One aspect, I say, we in those days we talk about only the perimeter security. So right now you talk about zero trust, talks on the five principles, right? Your data, applications, network, infrastructure, and identity as a whole. So when we talk about this, so you the zero trust says verify, never trust, verify at each and every layer for each and every users at any point of time from a location perspective. So zero trust is going to be the future as well. So in my view, if you look at it, right, looking at the future of cybersecurity appears to be both promising and challenging, right? Because as the emerging technologies intertwine with the persistent and evolving threat landscape, if you ask me. So it's both promising and challenging with all these ones, whichever I mentioned, from your AI, ML, your digital identity, your 5G, your IoT, OT, and everything, right? We talk about it's the future. Your threat landscape is increasing. You have to be both secure.
Okay.
That's
Thank
my
you, Ravi. Thank you so much. So I want to close with tell us more about your relationship, your human influences, your career, your family, your core values. Right? Can you wrap up with a brief summary of what drives you?
See, see, for me, right? It's always mine is a more close nuclear family, right? I have good friends, which have it's just all my college school friends, right? So it's all we have grown together, and we are still together about 7 to 8 people. But being said that, I have made good friends, right? Even in Infosys, Cognizant, or TCS as a whole, there are security and non-security people, but I keep interacting. So see, it's more, right? For me as a human, I work with all individuals, I work closely. It's more a kindness and being considerate, right? I show empathy and compassion to the people. So I respect people and they respect me as well. So it's a mutual trust. So it's all if in an organization is not the designation of the role. It's at the end of the day, you're employee to the organization. There to solve some business.
Do
But
you have a mantra, Ravi?
what is that?
Do you have a mantra?
Yeah, for me, mantra is hard work, consistency, keep it simple, and continuous learning. So as I said, I'm a continuous learner.
As is evident from your resume.
So I'm
Uh,
continuous. I keep reading. I've been in multiple forums, multiple blogs, multiple presentations, and I keep even people like you, right? I learned something today. Also, I learned something from you, which I I will share it with you what I have learned. But the thing is, what I have, I want to give it to others, and what I can learn from others, the good ones. Of course, the good ones I want to learn. It's not only about cybersecurity, but being human as a whole, right? The kindness. So it's always you should understand people from their perspective. When you understand from their perspective, you will succeed in your life.
Well stated, and I like the kindness, compassion, consideration, and empathy. And you are no doubt, embodying that, living that, and humble to boot. So, Ravi, thank you very much for an excellent conversation. Thank you for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Secure IT. As I continue the cybersecurity discussion with customers, vendors, end users, and employees, helping us learn more from their insights, experiences, and knowledge. Make sure to follow this podcast wherever it's available. And please do direct message me on LinkedIn, Twitter with your feedbacks, comments, questions. Thanks again, everyone, and see you next month.